My spirit's long gone. Those were the quiet words that escaped from Clara's parched mouth when Elias Thorne stumbled upon her. The tone was so empty, so shattered, it halted even a tough frontiersman like Elias in his steps. He'd faced blizzards, famines, and skirmishes out in Tombstone, but nothing prepared him for a scene this eerie. There she sat, a young lady barely past 24, huddled against the ruins of a weathered cart. Her locks were tangled, her complexion ashen like fresh snow, her flesh marked with welts. In spots, it was scraped, crusted blood holding fast like age paint on timber. The sole covering over her form was a tattered rag, scarcely sufficient to shield her, far from enough to ward off the chill that raced over the grasslands. For an instant, Elias wondered if she'd already passed on. Her gaze was wide but vacant, piercing right past him as though she'd surrendered all ties to this life. Only that faint admission showed she still drew breath, even if her essence seemed poised to fade away. He paused there, a knot forming in his throat that no phrase could loosen. Then he acted as any honorable soul might. Elias carefully shrugged off his own coat, the one he'd worn through the day's labors, carrying hints of earth and campfire embers. Silently, he wrapped it around her quivering frame. She recoiled initially, like a startled deer bracing for harm, but soon her limbs relaxed, too drained to fight, too weary to mind. That cart she'd endured the darkness and offered no refuge. It was a discarded shell, forsaken beside the Oregon Trail. The planks were warped, the axles splintered long ago. The breeze whistled through each gap, icy enough to numb a person's core. Yet this fragile woman had been abandoned to weather it, barely clothed and isolated. Gently, Elias steered her from that debris toward the warmth of his homestead. He refrained from inquiring about her identity or probing her past. Her expression revealed volumes beyond speech. It was a look of one who'd forsaken all belief, who'd been worn down until emptiness reigned within. As he accompanied her, a single notion pressed on his thoughts, a query any observer of this tale might ponder too. What sort of spouse could be so heartless as to banish his partner into the shadows, to abandon her chilled and wounded in a dilapidated cart like discarded refuse? Elias ushered Clara into the modest spare chamber of his cabin. The space carried scents of fresh bread and aged cedar, a welcome shift from the grit and toil outdoors. He eased her onto the bedside and drew a blanket around her. For a stretch, she merely gazed at the wooden floor, mute, uncertain if this was sanctuary or lingering illusion. When Elias offered a mug of hot stew, her grasp trembled fiercely enough that he supported it. She took a tentative swallow, paused, then another. Only after several moments did she murmur her name, Clara. Her timbre was hoarse, as if unspoken for ages. She insisted she didn't fit in, that her arrival spelled misfortune, that shadows would trail her path. Elias settled into a nearby seat and held his tongue. Experience had taught him that quiet often soothed more than inquiries. Gradually, the account emerged in fragments, amid uneven sighs. Her partner, Harlan Reed, a farrier from Wichita, a fellow with hands like hammers and a fury honed by ale. He'd forever been possessive, ever vigilant, quick to assume betrayal if a passerby merely nodded her way. Harlan would return home in a storm, his strikes landing on her sides, his strap etching her shoulders. The prior evening had eclipsed all before. She'd exchanged polite greetings with a local, nothing beyond. Harlan witnessed it, and that ignited him. He hauled her over the threshold, ripped away her garments, battered her, and cast her out like waste. When she pleaded for entry, he barred the entrance and bid her endure the frost. Her only haven was that forsaken cart along the path. That's where Elias had discovered her at first light. Elias absorbed it all without interruption, his features hardening, his callous fingers gripping the chair's edge. He'd encountered harshness before, but this ignited a profound resolve, something resolute. Clara noticed a fire in his gaze, and for the initial span in eras, a spark of optimism stirred. Perhaps not every man mirrored Harlan, yet she bowed her head and issued a caution. Strife loomed. Harlan wouldn't release her easily, and upon learning her whereabouts, he'd unleash chaos. Thus, the dilemma arose plainly. When Harlan arrived in pursuit, how would Elias respond? The dawn light had scarcely crested the meadows when the echo of galloping echoed through the grounds. Clara stiffened mid-bite, utensils suspended. No need to peer outside. She recognized it. Harlan Reed charged onto Elias's property like a blaze unchecked. His expression contorted in fury, his attire disheveled, the reek of liquor wafting in the warm breeze. He dismounted abruptly, feet slamming the soil, and bellowed her name. Elias was absent, having ventured out at sunrise to tend the livestock. This left Clara solitary, quaking at the entryway. She considered concealment, but opportunity fled. Harlan had sighted her already. He seized her wrist before she could retreat. His hold was unyielding, the sort that had crushed her spirit prior. He dragged her into the open and unleashed his accusations of disloyalty, disgrace, consorting with strangers. His shouts resonated across the land, rousing the animals and scattering wildlife. Then came the blows, one to her arm, another to her flank. Clara resisted faintly, but her vigor had ebbed. She sank to the earth as he ranted that she was his possession, that no homesteader, seasoned or novice, could claim her. At that juncture, the steady trot of approaching riders grew audible, deliberate, and firm. Elias had circled back. He reined in at the boundary, his vision sharpening on the tableau. Clara injured on the ground, Harlan looming with tightened hands. Elias's mouth set firm. He alighted, steps measured, his own palms forming resolute shapes. He advanced directly, positioning himself as a barrier between Clara and Harlan, and declared with unwavering tone, "This ends now. Not on my land. Nevermore." Harlan sneered and lunged to bypass him, but Elias held firm as stone. A firm push from Elias toppled the farrier backward into the mire. The resolve in the veteran frontiersman's stare sufficed to still him. It was the demeanor of one who'd endured plenty, who refused to idle while anguish persisted. Clara rose unsteadily behind him, grasping Elias's arm for support. For the inaugural occasion, she confronted Harlan with an ally, and herein the narrative truly unfolds. If you're eager to witness how a frontiersman armed solely with integrity defies a farrier driven by wrath, linger on and consider following for additional frontier yarns. For soon, Elias will journey to enlist a trusted ally, one wielding influence to alter fates. Elias understood Harlan wouldn't relent. Such individuals seldom retreated meekly. He'd return more inflamed and volatile. And next, he might wield more than mere force. Elias had observed enough similar souls to foresee escalation. Thus, he readied his mount the following dawn and embarked toward Virginia City. The trek was arduous, the heat pressing on his shoulders, yet Elias's purpose remained sharp. Only one figure could instill dread in Harlan Reed, his longtime comrade, Victor Santos. Some deemed him a traitor. Whispers labeled him nearer a rogue in polished attire. Regardless, Victor commanded much of the livestock dealings and several hardy souls in Nevada. If Victor decreed a person untouchable, ears perked up. Upon reaching Victor's domain, Elias met wary glances. Victor wasn't approached casually, but when the pair convened, Victor's face warmed with a measured smile. He offered brandy, clasped Elias's back, and attended as Elias recounted Clara's ordeal and the torment she'd suffered. Victor's grin dissolved swiftly. He reclined, gaze shadowed. "A soul whom the streets a lady lacks dignity," he stated. "And in my realm, the undignified find no quarter." That very twilight, Harlan was escorted to the tavern by Victor's associates. He postured boldly at first, feigning bravado, but Victor's command sliced through the hazy air, dissolving his poise. Victor laid it bare. Should Harlan ever harm Clara anew, he'd forfeit not merely his companion, but his livelihood, his repute, perhaps his existence. The establishment hushed all attention on Harlan. He gulped, pallor overtaking him, and for the premier instance he yielded. He grumbled faintly and fled into the gloom. Clara gained security, temporarily at least, but refuge differs from serenity, and mending spans farther than dread. This leads to the tale's conclusion, where a wounded spirit and a fatigued frontiersman learn that affection can sprout in the most serene corners. At last, Clara could inhale freely. The evenings remained tranquil at Elias's homestead, but the hush no longer oppressed. It nurtured. She started awakening at first light, aiding Elias with the herds, mastering how to repair barriers and survey the fields. Each modest duty mended a fragment of her essence. Elias demanded little. He proffered no lofty declarations, no vows beyond his means. Instead, he provided constant companionship. He demonstrated tying knots for the animals, scouting the flock at twilight, sowing grains for the cold season, with gentleness. And in that gentleness, Clara uncovered a security unfamiliar. The marks on her exterior dimmed, yet the inner wounds lingered longer. Certain dusks, she stirred in alarm, fearing Harlan's intrusion. During those, Elias would linger close, voiceless, affirming her company. Amid the calm, an unforeseen bond flourished. Not the fervor of youthful passion, but a gradual, profound connection. As autumn hues graced the Nevada vistas, Clara and Elias exchanged more than labors. They shared confidence. Simple suppers under the stars, chuckles at the obstinate donkey that balked at tasks, and extended pauses that conveyed depths beyond utterance. In those pauses, Clara sensed her core reviving. This narrative transcends mere harshness and ire. It concerns electing guardianship over injury. It highlights resilience born not of aggression, but of endurance and principle. And perhaps it reveals that affection isn't always bold. At times it murmurs. At times it merely endures. And occasionally it emerges when two weary hearts align perfectly. So, ponder this. In Elias's stead, would you summon the resolve to oppose someone like Harlan? As Clara, could you muster the will to believe once more? If this yarn resonated, share a nod so others might discover it. And for further chronicles in the frontier, brimming with resolve, sorrow, and the transformative bonds that redefine lives, join in to catch every unfolding saga. For amid the vast expanses of history's frontiers, endless accounts await Revelation P.